있다는 것을 분명하게 또 밝히는 그 두 가지 작업을 최선을 다해서 하려고 했다 하는 것이 이제 이분의 결론입니다. 전혀 독립된 두 개의 다른 학문이 아니라 공통된 부분도 있고 차이점도 있다는 것을 이제 말씀하셨습니다. Okay, thank you very much for your talk, Professor Rene van Woudenberg. 네, 감사합니다. 아마 여러분 이렇게 처음 보시면 좀 쉽지는 않지만 한글로 요약된 내용들을 보시면 또 그렇게 어렵지도 않아요. 그래서 미리 제가 번역을 다 해드렸는데요. 시간 관계상 그 세컨드 파트는 생략을 하고 이제 우리 교수님들의 코멘트를 듣도록 하겠습니다. Now we are going to listen the comments of three professors. Let us welcome them in the stage. 우리 교수님들 나오실 때 박수로 환영해 주시기 바랍니다. 네, 첫 번째 논평은 우리 법학부의 이부근 교수님께서 한 10분 정도 발표해 주시겠습니다. 한글로도 만드셨고 또 영문으로도 되어 있으니까 편하시게 하시면 되겠습니다. So the first comment is from Professor Kuyper Lee. He has already made in a written form in English and Korean. So he can do that in 10 minutes. Please.
I'm very honored today now to be a commentator on Professor Woudenberg's presentation today. First of all, I have to disclose why I'm called Kuyper at Hamdong. It's not Kuyper at Amsterdam. You are now watching Kuyper at Hamdong. In my college days, it was 1980s, many Korean universities were full of the spontaneous, Marxism. So some very young students in my university, my mother university, made a kind of club reading some modern Christian classics in order to find out some alternative philosophical foundation against the spontaneous Marxism. And we started reading some modern classics like John Stott's books and Martin Lloyd-Jones' books. And in the way of reading those books, we spontaneously started a custom to name our members after some heroic people's name. So that's why one of my friends who are now pastoring in Chicago became Roy Park because his hero was Martin Lloyd-Jones. And after that, they named me after my hero, Abraham Kuyper. So that's why I'm called Kuyper still. Yeah. I'd like to express my thanks to Professor Woudenberg for giving me a good chance to learn about Abraham Kuyper's theory of faith and science. As a professor of constitutional law and politics, I've been very much interested in Kuyper's political theory, especially the doctrine of spirit sovereignty, but had few opportunities to be exposed to more epistemological aspects. Professor Woudenberg's paper allowed me to think this issue a bit seriously. I want to contribute to today's dialogue by adding only 2 comments on the topic. According to the paper, as you heard, Kuyper claimed that every science in a certain degree starts from faith. How about rewriting this sentence in a reverse order? Every faith in a certain degree starts from science. If you mind the verb start, we can replace it with opposite pronoun. Every faith in a certain degree ends with science. As Professor Woudenberg kindly explains, Kuyper's term faith implies foundational beliefs that are held with certainty. Then, How about trying to rewrite the whole sentence reversely again? Every foundational belief that are held with certainty starts from and or ends with science. The author tries to call Abraham Kuyper an epistemological foundationalist with an argument that Kuyper's foundationalism shared many commonalities with Thomas Reid's common sense realism. But can we use the term epistemological foundationalist for describing my rewritten sentence rather than the original one? Some of my Handong students might say that the term foundational epistemologist is a bit more fitting, though neither they nor I have any idea on whether that term is really used by philosophers. Actually, Professor Woudenberg is surrounded by 3 lawyers tonight, which is very sadful, sorry. What I want to say is that the direction of philosophical reasoning matters a lot. If every science in a certain degree starts from faith, the foundationer must not be science but faith. And if every faith in a certain degree starts and or ends with science, the emphasis must not be upon faith but science. With this kind of thought in mind, we can attempt to figure out what Kuyper's intention was. Did he want to save faith from the universalism of science, or just wants to save science from the particularism of religion? If I, use the example of, Kuyper, I think, we can say it like this. In the paper, you can see that only because my mother revealed to me who my father was, I do know this as a fact. But I think, in order to believe my mom's, revelation, I should find out, I should fix the object of my belief. So I have to recognize the man who probably, is my father, and even I should know the woman who claimed that she is my mom. So before having some faith, we have to have a stage of epistemological recognition. In that sense, we can say that we start from faith and to go into the area of science. But I think, we can say reversely. We can start science and then go into the stage of faith. Or for explanation to others, of our faith, we have to mobilize something logical, something scientific. That's the core of my first comment. And secondly and lastly, of course, the answer was already given according to the Kuyper. Professor Woudenberg said, a conflict between faith and science, Kuyper boldly asserts, does not exist. However, a careful reader of the paper can find that this kind of conflict still remains in different forms in Kuyper theory. First, the faith foundational beliefs in the sphere of humanities functions more decisively than the sphere of natural science. Second, Christians and non-Christians are inevitably different even in doing science, even if they share many commonalities in beliefs, because they have different foundational beliefs. Even if the author emphasizes some continuity between them by mentioning the existence of shared foundational beliefs and so-called common grace, it is very true that there is discontinuity too. If we combine those two, I'm sure that Christian scholars in humanities, like today's presenter and discussants, must be in a more stressful situation, whereas non-Christian natural science are in less stressful situation. The author seems to try to interpret Kuyper's theory in a more seamless fashion, but to me, frankly, Abraham Kuyper seems a kind of problematic figure who implies cracks, conflicts, tensions, even contradictions in himself at the same time. In this sense, I might view him in the perspective of German idealism still. This is my comment.
Thank you very much, Professor Kuyper Lee. 교수님 감사합니다. Thank you for your comments. But Professor van Woudenberg will not give his response now, but after listening to the other two professors. 그래서 van Woudenberg 교수님께서는 세 분의 논평을 다 듣고 나서 이제 답변을 주시겠습니다. Now is the time for Professor Eric Enro. Oh no, you want to do first, Gabriel? Whatever.
I won the arm wrestling match. I get to do it.
Okay, whatever you like.
Well, let me thank Professor van Valkenburg as well for his interesting remarks. There were several things in the paper that interest me, but the thing that was most fascinating to me was the suggestion about how we should understand the division between the empirical or observational sciences and the humanities. This is a very old and difficult problem, and I think a very fruitful one to investigate. And the plausibility of Kuyper's explanation of the division between the humanities and the observational sciences, its extreme plausibility, the explanatory power of it, seems to me a very good reason to take Kuyper's views very seriously. So I'll just remind you what we heard again. That the difference between the humanities and the sciences are that the humanities, things like our study of literature, our study of poetry, our study of drama, our study of rhetoric or writing, arts, these things are different because faith is foregrounded in them. It's the central issue. Because people on these subjects vary in their basic faith commitment. The relevant faith commitment for history was the example that was given. People treat different types of historical testimony and evidence differently. They put different types of faith in it. But with respect to observational sciences, everybody treats the raw data of perception the same way. If we kick a stone, we believe in a stone. If we walk into a tree, we believe in the tree. Everybody does. But if you read an old document, you don't necessarily believe the old document. If you see an old artifact, you don't necessarily receive a strong belief in an ancient civilization in the same way. This seems to me a very powerful explanation for a phenomenon that we all see, and it really contributes to the force and power with which I regarded Kuyper's underlying thesis about the nature of faith and its universality. So I would just applaud the careful and succinct description of that distinction that Professor van Woudenberg made, and I think it implicitly recommends Kuyper's view a great deal. That said, I wonder, and this is relevant for the question of conflict between faith and the empirical sciences, I wonder if this proposal of the distinction between the humanities and the observational sciences would hold up if we consider Kuyper's broader views about regeneration or palingenesis. As I did a little sleuthing around in his Encyclopedia of Theological Sciences, and this is all just coming out of my remarks if you want to follow along, I saw that there were 4 areas of regeneration, spiritual regeneration. As the Christian is transformed in knowing Jesus Christ, he has 4 experiences that he has to take into account. His own regeneration, the transformation we have in knowing Christ, that's one thing he has to account for. 2 is the source of that regeneration. Where does it come from? That's the main subject of theology, as I understand his view. Where's all this regeneration in me coming from? 3, though, goes to the regeneration of the world. Christians believe not only that our spirits are regenerated in Christ, but we believe in the coming transformation of the entire world. The resurrection of the body, the new heaven and the new earth. You know, all the cows laying down with, what do cows lay down with? Lions lay down with lambs, and children play with pythons, adders, and I forgot the snake. I can always rely on Professor Scholl. There's a transformation of the world coming, and Kuyper says, and we believe this as well, that this transformation of the world is sometimes anticipated right now in things that we call miracles. So Christ comes, and there are all these starving people there, and Christ blesses the food, and then there's enough food for everybody. Or Christ sees a dead man in a tomb, and all the relatives weeping for the man, and then the tomb is rolled away, and the man is alive again. Lazarus is alive again. And these miracles are breaking forths of the palingenesis that is to come. But I think that modern observational scientists and Christians would have the same kind of dispute that Kuyper says only exists in the humanities if they were to observe those phenomena. That material scientists, observational scientists today, when they see miracles, interpret them differently if they're Christians or not Christians. The Christians, when they see miracles, when they see a healing, are not necessarily going to immediately say, well, that's no observational proof of anything because it must just be a hallucination of mine. They're not willing to see miracles. When they see the church, when they see the cooperation of the church, they're not willing to see a miracle. And so, just as in the humanities, Kuyper says people have different reactions to what they perceive, so too in the observational sciences. The resistance of scientists, or perhaps the professor would say, those who are scientistic only, to viewing miracles would be problematic. And so I wonder, I love the distinction proposed between humanities and observational sciences. I wonder if it can be, if it's stable in the face of miracles. How much time do I have? 1 more minute? 3 more minutes. Thank you for protecting me. That's because I won the arm wrestling match.
Because he does his homework.
I do my homework. My third comment, which if you want to skip to the last of my comments, is where you can find the translation. If Kuyper doesn't mean by faith saving faith, then perhaps the discussion, Kuyper's discussion about the conflict between faith and science is less illuminating for us today, because most Christians today, when they talk about the conflict between faith and science, mean the conflict between saving faith and science. And so maybe what we should be asking instead is not what's Kuyper's position about the conflict between faith and science, but rather what's Kuyper's position on the conflict between theology and science. And I take it for Kuyper, again, to return to this notion of regeneration, Kuyper thinks that essential to our idea, our proper idea of theology, is our experience of regeneration. The theology is not some sort of dry understanding of what God is, but an attempt to understand the source of our regeneration. And again, it seems to me that if we were to ask the question slightly differently, not what does Kuyper think about the relationship between faith and science, but rather between theology and the observational sciences, because theology is all about regeneration, there's going to be massive conflict, because the Christian is going to say this world, and this goes back to the remarks that the professor made, He said, Kuyper says all conflict in all sciences comes from this question of regeneration. Christians believe this world is abnormal, headed towards regeneration. Other people are deceived into believing this is the normal state. So if theology is all about regeneration, then all of the conflict that you mentioned at the beginning that flows from differences over regeneration are going to be found between the sciences and theology. So if we change the question a little bit and say, Kuyper, conflict between theology and science, I think we get a very different answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Engel. Okay, 여러분들이 방금 말씀하신 내용들은 여기 프로그램에 다 나와 있으니까 참고하시면 되겠고요. There are common grounds for the two professors. They are also from the same city, St. Louis, Missouri. Here, they have the common point, the Kuyper, the name and the topic. I found it very interesting. 우리 두 교수님은 다 세인트루이스에서 오셨어요. 그런 점이 공통점이고, 이 교수님과 바우든베르그 교수님은 이제 카이퍼라는 점에서 또 공통점이 있는 것 같습니다. Okay, now the last response from Professor Godel-Schulten, please.
Well, I'm always happy to follow the distinguished Professor Eric Inlow because he always does his homework and has excellent insights. I also want to begin with my thanks and commendation to Professor van Woudenberg for his presentation and to speak a word of thanks, especially on behalf of Carmichael College, who is one of the co-sponsors of this evening's symposium. I appreciate your presence and your scholarship, your contribution to our community of learning. I'm here pinch hitting also. I cannot fill the shoes of our Dutch professor, Professor Nicholas Lantinga, whose daughter is performing in the orchestra concert tonight, and so he asked me to come and sit in for him because I could never stand in for him. I could never fill his shoes. But I'm happy to be here. And I am appreciative of the comments made on regarding Abraham Kuyper's view of faith and science. And I see it as, first, as a defense on behalf of Christians who are engaged in the sciences. And so that Kuyper provides, and again, I'm viewing this as a litigator, as a lawyer, and so you might anticipate that I would view this in terms of advocating. So I see it as a defense on behalf of Christians who would seek to be engaged in the sciences, the natural sciences, the social sciences, by this idea that all science proceeds from foundational beliefs. If I'm able to engage in a conversation with my colleague who is not a believer in Christ, who is not a Christian, but I'm able to establish and acknowledge this common ground, I am then able to, in a sense, begin to defend my place at the table. That if we all who are doing science, engaging in the search for learning, the scientific inquiry, begin from foundational beliefs. Granted, sometimes different foundational beliefs, but if we all begin from foundational beliefs, then I, as a Christian who is seeking to engage in the scientific inquiry, am as much entitled to a position at the table as anyone else was. That simply because I have different foundational beliefs does not discredit me or exclude me from the inquiry. And so essentially, Kuyper's position, as I understand it, as it has been presented here, first provides a defense for the Christian scholar who would say, I want to engage my discipline from a distinctively Christian set of foundational beliefs, some of which will be shared by my non-Christian colleagues, others of which will be admitted and acknowledged from the beginning to be separate and distinct and not a part of a common set of foundational beliefs. But simply because I don't share all of your foundational beliefs when I'm engaging in my inquiry with my colleagues, that doesn't say I don't have something to say, I don't have something to contribute to the discussion, to the inquiry that is before us, whatever that might be, whatever discipline of the natural sciences, and also into inquiries into the social sciences likewise. So it seems to me as though it's an effective, at least a strong defense for Christians engaging in scholarship from their set of foundational Christian beliefs. But even more so, I think the way I heard the presentation, I hear it more as an admonition to Christians who are Christian academics, who might have the tendency to take the position that because there are academics in my area of study who come from a different, call it worldview, a different set of foundational beliefs that do not include my Christian regenerate foundational beliefs, that I don't have to listen to that person. I hear this as a warning against that type of attitude. The understanding that Abraham Kuyper gives us is this: we need to engage the learning endeavor, the seeking for knowledge. We need to engage that with an openness to others because of this very same notion that all science proceeds from foundational beliefs, and that there are certain shared foundational beliefs that all people who are engaged in the endeavor will begin from. And so I, as a Christian, need to be listening to my non-Christian colleagues and understand that they may have something very important to contribute in my area of study, whatever it might be, whether it's the law, whether it